2005 Toyota Passo. This one is a very tiny, efficient car with a 1KR FE engine. And the problem with this originally, because things have changed now, originally this had a problem that it stalled on the owner twice. The owner happens to be the daughter of the garage owner that I do some diag for. So he took the car and drove it. Nothing happened. When he reached the garage, he changed the coils, changed the plugs, did service to it, and as he was proceeding to take the car back home, it stalled on him. When he brought the car back to the garage, the car was fine. When he parked it and went to move it, it had a crank no start. So he had informed me about it and told me that the computer had been taken previously by the previous owner, and I don't know what was done with it, but it's the original computer that was put back, but apparently it was opened. That's all he knew. He tried to get a hold of me and I was very busy, so they kept driving and it kept having a problem. But the problem would be very intermittent. Some days he would go very fine, some days it would stall a lot. So when I was to come to look at it, it had developed a second problem, and that was the horn wasn't working. So he called somebody else thinking that the horn is a very simple circuit, wanted them to fix that horn. In the midst of trying to repair the horn, this car now is a no start. No crank, no start. So this is the state that I found the car in. We have the panel taken apart here. We have the center panel also taken apart. And we have the engine computer laying down there. And we have the fuse box laying loose in its chamber over there. I am not sure why this was done. Probably to look for something to do with the horn, I don't know. But currently, this is a no crank, no start. Oh, and by the way, the guy was here to repair the horn. When I came, the horn is actually working. So, see that? It's a no crank. But look at this. This cluster is lit up. We have a few things that I don't like. One, that overdrive off is flashing. It's not supposed to be. Second, that coolant temperature is flashing. It's not supposed to be. Third, we are missing our check engine light. So let me put it off and on again, focusing on the check engine light. Let's key in the ignition on. So we initialize the EPS, electronic power steering. We initialize the gear, but we do not have a check engine light. So that's a red flag for me. Right now, I want to see whether this engine computer is getting its power. First, I want to do a preliminary scan, and for the life of me, would you believe it? I cannot find the DLC in this car. I've checked under here, all over the place, no DLC. So, one of the few times I need to look at the manual as to where the DLC is. So let me do that quickly and then come back to this. In the electronic technical manual, go to wiring diagram, engine, and we are the 1KR FE. Now I haven't translated this diagram yet, but for now let's go to the DLC. I just want to find out where my DLC is. So there it is, and that's my component location, instrument panel. And we're going to search here the LC, and we don't have it. Oh wait, let's go back and see. It's D3. Okay, so it's D3. Oh, here it is, D3. Alright, let me look for it. Oh, okay, there it is. So I've seen it. It was removed from its opening, so there's all this junk here. So let me cut this off, put it back in its opening, and then we're going to proceed. So that's where we are. But now we can connect our scanner. Let's connect and scan this car. Let's just go for a health report. Okay, just as I suspected, we have ABS, EPS, SRS, and TCM. Now the weird thing is, the TCM in a lot of these cars is the same as the ECM, but I can bet you this is no communication. Yes, lost communication with ECM, PCM, A state current, and that's our current code, just as I suspected. Now, we're not going to go any further with that. What we need to do is to find out from our wiring diagram, where does the PCM get its powers and grounds from. So this has to be the strangest electronic manual that I have seen from Toyota. Completely unlike their previous designs. When they moved from paper-based, they moved directly into the electronic technical manual. But this one is actually a PDF manual with a very bad navigation control. The first thing I do is to open my wiring diagram, which I have here. Then I always open the ECU diagram so that I can see my pinouts easily. I normally get that from the repair manual side. So here we see our familiar menu navigation, like select release date, repair book, explanation book, wiring diagram collection, and functional repair book. So we're supposed to be on the repair manual. I come here to engine and I get this weird PDF, and it's a very long PDF, so everything is here. So it has a menu, and here we see changes from 12 or 4, and we are 3 or 5, so we're here. And it lists these changes, but doesn't list this one, but it's in here. So this is the engine control. It gives you a general schematic, and then this is the connector IO view. Now the strange thing is, if you look at this is totally unlike the numbering that Toyota uses. They've gone across connectors in numbers, and they never do that. So you start here 1 to 7, 8 to 13, 14 to 20, etc. down the line. It is inconsistent with how we are numbered on the wiring diagram. So on the wiring diagram, we are numbered individually as connectors. Like you see here, we have B7 and here D7. Anyway, it doesn't stop us. One of the goals of this channel, as you know, is to overcome data confusion. So let's use our heads, unlike AI. So we're looking for the permanent battery feed, and that's on D7, but we'll see that it's designated as bat. We're going to come to our I/O and just look for bat. Only one T. And we see that we are on pin 38. 38 is here. Cool. Then we come and look for our ignition feed. Page 2, not there. Page 3, there it is. So we got our ignition switch feed, and it comes on D35. That doesn't mean anything to me, so I go to ignition switch, go here, look for ignition switch, and it's on terminal 120. Okay, cool. And 120 is right here. So 38 hot at all times, 120 hot on key on. Before we go to the grounds, let's first confirm that we have those two power feeds. So that's our ECU. Our first power supply is our permanent battery, and that is pin 38, black and red, and that is this guy here. And we have our power. Now remember, loaded test, that could be disappearing when you put on the ECU. So let's put the key on and see if that will remain. Alright, so put the key on and the power supply remains. Our next power supply is the ignition switch power supply, and it's 120, and that is the light green wire, and that is this one here. I'm going to probe, make sure we're in there, and that is hot on key on. Keys on, and we have power. So next we need to look for our grounds. Alright, next we look for our grounds. Typically two grounds on Toyota engine computers. We have E1 gray, and that is on C32, which means nothing to me at this point, and E01, which is C7, again means nothing to me. We'll look at the other diagram. Now there is another ground here, E2, but E2 is a sensor ground, as you can see, and it is supplied from the engine computer. Okay, so this is a ground from the engine computer dedicated to the sensors. We want the ground to the computer, so it's E1 and E01. Let's come to our ECU view, and we're going to search for E1, pin 125, and 125 is here. Cool. And E01, and it's not that one, it is that one, pin 20, and pin 20 is here. Let's go test. Alright, our first ground is 125, and we're in it right now, and we're going to put our key on. Remember, loaded tests only. Keys on. Looks to be that we have a good ground. Now whenever I test grounds, I always like to confirm with a test light connected to battery positive. So we're going to touch there, and our test light is lit. Now the reason why I did that is simply because I'm bumping the pin in and out. I don't have a very good connection. Let me make sure my connection is good. but I can tell you that's exactly what it is. So now I'm in there properly, and test light, as you can see, that's a good ground. Okay, so that is our first ground. Our second ground is 20, and that is right here. And we're in that wire. Key is still on, and that is a good ground. So what do you think? Bad ECU? Hold up. For ECUs, remember, ignition switch turns the ECU on, but the ECU is supposed to turn on the main relay. Before we go condemning and jumping on this ECU, I want to look for a main relay line, and I want to test its control, and then I want to test its power return from the relay. So control to the relay and power from the relay. To make it quick, we're just going to put that on 2 channels. Here is our AFI main relay, and it is controlled on this line MRO. So it is powered on one side of the relay, so this side has to be a ground when it's on. We're going to put our probe here, a violet wire. When the ignition switch is off, this line is off, meaning we should have 12 volts coming through the relay and waiting here to be turned on. So you should see 12 volts here. When we put the key on, this should drop to 0 volts to energize that relay. After the relay is energized, it connects power to plus B1. So we're going to put channel 1 on MRO, the violet wire, and channel 2 on plus B1, black and yellow wire. Let's see where they are here. MRO is pin 39, and that is right here. Very good. And plus 1, I do not have plus B1. All right, here it's plus B1, but here it's plus B. Okay, and plus B is here, and it's on pin 27, and 27 is here. Let's set up for that 2 channels. There were 2 channels connected. Channel A, main relay control from the ECU. Channel B, main relay power from the main relay. Let's put the key on. Key is on. Hey, look at that. What do you see? There is no power from the main relay. That's awesome. Seen our problem? Now, careful guys. See what I told you? After checking your powers and grounds before jumping on a module, make sure that that module doesn't have a self-powering relay. A self-powering relay is a relay that powers the module, and the module itself controls that relay. So this is a control, and this ECU turns on its own power supply. So always make sure that you check that main relay before you go condemning a module. So we do not have a bad ECU, we have a missing power feed. Now the question is, do we have an open or a short on this line? The quick answer to that is we're going to turn our key on again, and we're going to observe the red channel and see what kind of signal we have there. So you can see on the red channel we do have a power supply. Let me pause that. And let's measure that power. So we have 1.4 volts on that line. Right there, that tells me there is no short on this line. We have a compromised power feed from our main relay. But just in case, I'm going to inject a fused power supply onto this. If you are unsure about injecting power, always inject a fused power supply, because if you have a short on this line and if you inject direct power, you're going to burn the connector, because the failure point will be the weakest connection. Right now my weakest connection is that back probe. I've done this before, it has literally caught fire on some cars. Be careful with that. So fused power coming up next. So there's my fused power supply setup. Now I really don't need to do this. I'm basically done with this. When you use scopes for a long time, you know how to interpret your data. I bet you we have a bad main relay. Why? Because we have 2 volts coming down this line. We don't have a short. But just for your sakes, let me show you how to properly inject voltage. Our key is still on. Our main relay is turned on. And I'm going to put this in here. There we go. Fuel pump kicked on. And now we have full power there. And by the way, I'm using the biggest fuse I can find. That's a 30 ampere. Because there are many things on this line. This guy should start. And our check engine light is on. OD off has stopped flashing. Start this baby up. Oh, we still have a no crank. Okay. So that's one thing solved. Oh, maybe we need our 2 power supplies to come on at the same time. All right. Now I don't have a second hand here. Let me see how best to do this. All right, I have tried with my 2 free hands without holding the camera. I've tried hooking this power on at the same time turning on the ignition switch. It's a no-go for that. We still have no crank. So we have a separate issue for the no crank. Let's diagnose that. Let's see how this starter is energized from the wiring diagram. So let's check out how our starter is controlled. Let's get out of here, go back to wiring diagrams, and we go to the engine starting system. There's our starter. It's controlled by a starter relay. Starter relay gets its power from the ignition switch, ST position, and it gets its control from STR. Oh, transmission control computer. So I was wrong. In this model, the engine computer is separate and the transmission control module is separate. All right. So it's pin 16 STR, white and blue. Okay, let's see where this transmission control computer lives. Get back out here. Let's go to the outfitting diagram here, and let's see, should be somewhere in the instrument panel. Okay, so here we got our engine control module. That's the one that's been dropped down for us, and this is the transmission control module. So it's on the side of the passenger panel above the fuse box. So let's go and look for it. there's our fuse box, which has been dropped down conveniently, and right there is our transmission control module. So now we need our pinouts for the transmission control module. Let's come here to transmission and transaxle, and this is the transmission and transaxle, and then this is transmission control, and it's not activated. Let me see if I can get it a different way. Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's our general schematic, and there is our control module view. 3 connectors. We have 2 connectors, not 3. Wait a minute. Let me just check that again. Hey, what do you see? We actually have 3 connectors, but one of them is disconnected. Crazy. All right. Now, before I even go far, let me just look for that connector. Now, I've checked down there and I can't find that connector. There's no trace of it anywhere. But look at that. I didn't see this. This says connector A. This connector is not used. So there's nothing here. Okay, so we only have B and C. Very nice. So let's look for our STA line. STR. So that's the STR. It's connector B, pin 16, and that is a white and blue wire. So let me connect to that and put that channel on the scope. There is my channel 1 on the STR line, and channel 2, we're still connected to the main relay input power, and I am still giving a power feed to it via my 30 amp fuse. So on the red channel we should have our power to the ECU, and the blue channel is what we are watching. That is our starter control. Put the key in the ignition, key on, and let's crank and off. Let's pause that. What do you see? We do not have control to our starter. All right, why don't we have control to our starter? What's the transmission control module missing? So let's come back here. We do not have control to our starter. So this right now is not being controlled. But why? We should have a park or a neutral position, and we do have it because if we put the key on, we have Prindle and it's on park. Okay, so we have a park position there, but do we have that park position on the transmission control computer? Maybe, maybe not. The other thing is that transmission control computer powered? The answer, yes. Why? We read data out of it from the DLC. So I'm not worried about powers and grounds. I'm worried about whether we have our park and neutral position. So let's check number 15. B15 is our park signal, and let's see what happens. In park, we should get a ground on B15. P. Let's come back here. Let's look for P. And P is C15. So here on 15, we should have a ground. Let's check whether we have that ground. So I've added a third channel, channel C, and that is on the violet wire for the transmission park signal. Scope is running, and we already have what looks like a ground on that wire, but is this really a ground? Take my test light. Again, verify that we're connected to battery positive, which we are. And I'm going to put my test light in here. We should get a lit test light, and that is a good ground. So let's put the key on. Key is on. Crank. And we still have no control over that starter relay. So this is completely a control issue. Now, since we don't have control on that starter relay, and we have everything this needs, well, I'm assuming we have everything. We haven't checked powers, all the powers and grounds to that transmission control module. I want to run this engine because my battery is getting low. So, and I want to see whether this engine will at least crank. And when the engine has cranked, we should read the data from the transmission control module and see what's up. It'll give us direction. So what I'm going to do is, on my blue channel, which is that one, I'm going to give it a permanent ground such that when I hit the key, my starter relay will be activated. So there's my ground that I've added to my starter control line, and I've just piggybacked it to my ground rail down here. And let's put the key on. I just want this car to crank. Let's crank. Oh yeah! Okay. So we are running. Check engine light is on, of course. So why don't we have control of our starter? Let's pull live data from the transmission control module and see what's going on. We're about to pull codes and listen to what the engine is doing. Something really weird is going on here. Let's go pull codes. Alright, so we have a couple of codes. Let's first go to the transmission control module. Lost communication with ECM, PCM. Okay, that was there before. Let me go to the ECM. Exhaust gas recirculation air control circuit and idle control system current. Okay, that explains why we are running the way we are. It still doesn't explain why we do not have startup authorization from the transmission control module. We have another issue here that's confusing me. How does a transmission control computer know you're cranking? Because this is an output to this relay. I'm not seeing any other way of recognizing that you are in the crank position, because here the only line that comes from the crank position goes to the relay, and then you have this. So how does this computer know that you've hit the crank position? There's nothing here that suggests that this signal is being sensed. Let's go to the transmission control. Here. Same here. I've looked at this and there's a sense for the prindle position. There's a battery power feed. There is a starter control. This is the starter relay. So that's the control, the STR line we're looking at previously. But there is no start signal input. So again, the question is, how does the transmission control computer know that you're cranking? I'm confused. Well, it's 7:30 right now, PM. It's getting late. I need to revisit this. Let me go home and translate these diagrams. The engine control, the transmission control, and the starter. And pick this up another day, but this is interesting. Hey, just a quick one before I go. I want to see where my EFI relay is. It is in the junction box on the passenger side. Here's the EFI relay, and look at this. This is the horn relay. Remember when we started this, I told you that this guy came to fix the horn, and then when he was done, this car could not start. What are the chances that the horn relay was bad and he switched it with the EFI relay? Let's see. Check this out. Those are relays. That's the EFI relay, and that's the horn relay. I'm going to switch these two, and that looks weird. Okay, let's keep that in mind. But I want to switch this relay, which we know is bad, to the horn position, and then I'm going to take my EFI relay, if it can fit in there. And then I'm going to take my EFI relay and my horn relay, and put it in the EFI position. Okay, so I've switched those two relays. Now we know the EFI relay was bad. Bingo! And this car should now start. There's the key. There's the key. There we go. Oh yeah. But we don't have idle control. That's a whole separate problem. And by the way, I have not connected my power supply, external power supply. So that horn relay was originally on the horn position. That guy came and switched it to the EFI position. It was a bad relay, and that's why we got this no start. However, this does not explain why we do not have start authorization from our TCM, because right now I'm still grounded. Let me take this off completely and let me try and start again. If we do not start, then I know what happened here. So there we go, and I'm cranking. As you can see, no crank. So what happened here is this. Now I can begin to build my case. I'm a detective, you see. Here's what happened. This car had a horn problem, An electrician was called to fix the horn. He fiddled around here, tracked it down to the relay, accidentally switched the two relays, got a no start, started fiddling around, and when he was fiddling around, I bet you what he did, he accidentally fed 12 volts into this line and hit the crank position. That driver grounded and has fried the driver in the TCM. That's what I can think of right now, and it's all related and all makes sense to what that electrician came and did. Now, this is unrelated to our original problem. Our original problem with this car is still there, but there's another thing that has been induced. That funky idling, it wasn't there before, because the owner tells me this car was running perfect. So we will have to find out why the idle control isn't working. But for now, that EFI relay was the issue. It was switched. So I'm going to buy a relay because I've seen those two relays. They look messed up. Somebody tried to pry both of them open. I'm not going to fiddle with them. We're going to buy two new relays and put in there. So we're going to solve the horn and the EFI. But our original problem is undiagnosed, and we have built in a new problem with that. So we're going to repair the driver in this TCM and then start our other diagnosis, where this car dies intermittently, and intermittently he has a crank no start. Wow, this is a good one.